Well. Daniel Dubois knocks out Anthony Joshua for the count in the 5th round. No TKOs in this fight. Okay, where do we begin with this one? Right, first of all, okay, I and most other people picked Joshua to win. But there was always that caveat that if Joshua got tagged early, okay, it could unravel in a different way. Because Joshua's the type of guy, if he gets clipped, he takes not seconds or even minutes, but sometimes rounds to come back, And that's precisely what happened here. Bear in mind that Daniel Dubois, 13 months ago, was knocked out by Alexander Usyk and branded a quitter, and also ran, a guy who'd never fulfill his potential. This was the second time he quit. Different circumstances, of course, the first one being against Joe Joyce. He came back with some might say, quite a surprising stoppage win over Jarrell Miller. He then, again, I thought Hrgovic would beat Dubois. I got that one wrong as well. But he dominated Filip Hrgovic, stopped him in 8 rounds, and now he's knocked out Joshua. Okay, what does this tell us? This tells us that the O, as everyone calls it an O, which is a fucking letter, not a number, they really mean the 0, means absolutely nothing if you haven't faced the best, all right? A few fighters do face the best, and they retire undefeated. Ricardo Lopez, Marciano and so on. No problem with that. Right, but this precious 0 that fighters cling to means absolutely nothing if you're not learning lessons. And Daniel Dubois learned 2 lessons, just about as hard as you can possibly learn them. And he has moved on only 13 months later to knock out Anthony Joshua with a 96,000 capacity at Wembley Stadium. He is absolutely on top of the world. He is not the heavyweight champion of the world. That's Alexander Usyk. But who's going to argue that he's not the next in the pecking order? All right. Incredible performance, incredible comeback, if you like, incredible progression and learning curve for Daniel Dubois. All right. Now, the fight itself. Why did I and so many other people think Joshua would win this fight? Well, because if you look at Dubois, he comes out, he's extremely aggressive, obviously very, very heavy-handed, but he leaves huge gaps, or tends to leave huge gaps in his defence. He was getting caught repeatedly by Hrgovic, and the logic was Joshua could ping the right hand over, was, defensively pretty good. He's essentially become a front-footed counterpuncher of sorts, Joshua, in his previous performances. And he would probably, control Dubois with a jab and, ping the right hand over and eventually get the job done. I think I said he stopped him in about 8 rounds. Now, what's one of the first things you learn if you go into a boxing gym? It's one of the first things I learned, right? You jab with a jabber. And what did Dubois do? He jabbed with the jabber. From the word go, he was extremely, extremely aggressive, letting his hands go, seemed emotionally completely in control of himself. Joshua looking a little bit pensive, probably starting a bit slower, weirdly leaving gaps in his defence. Don't ask me why, but he did. Dubois jumps all over him, moving forward. He actually landed a little bit of a warning bell, a little bit of a right-hand punch on Joshua after about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And then at the end of the first round, he lands a chopping right hand, which pushes Joshua into the ropes. Joshua tries to cover up, semi-cover up. Dubois pours all over him like sauce over spaghetti, and down onto all fours goes Joshua, and he's hurt. He is hurt. He manages to get up, and that's the end of the round, luckily for him, because otherwise, if that was a minute earlier, it could be a first-round knockout. He comes out in the second round. Again, Dubois looking very dangerous, jabbing with the jabber. Joshua can't find his rhythm. Again, when Joshua does jab, and he did this an awful lot throughout the fight, he was firing his jab from, the shoulder or sort of nipple tit area, if you like, and then bringing it back to his waist. Now, I've heard of plenty of fighters fire from the hip because it's out of the periphery of the vision, but then they bring it back into a defensive area. He wasn't doing that. And I'm like, what the fuck's he doing? Bizarre stuff. And, the second round, I thought Dubois won the second round. Third round, Joshua was on the floor again. Okay, again, huge gaps in the defence, can't find any kind of rhythm, not fainting nearly enough. Very sort of sloppy shape from Joshua, using his feet, not really giving enough angles. He was using his feet a bit, but Dubois was cutting the ring off beautifully as well. When Joshua did move, he cut the ring off very, very well and put constant pressure, constant heat, constant water on the rock, eroding the rock on Joshua. Right hand, down goes Joshua again. Okay, and he's hurt again. Gets up, all right, looking very... I didn't think he'd get through the fourth. I really didn't. But somehow he did. He was on the floor again, but that was more of a slip because Dubois brought the right hand over, and Joshua... I mean, Joshua was all over the place. He was a rag doll, spaghetti legs, and for a lot of the time. And anyway, fourth round, right hand. Joshua skids on the lettering on the advertisement on the canvas, falls down. Referee calls it a knockdown. No, all right, no problem. There was a connect, I think, so I ain't got a problem with that. And this is a nightmare for Joshua. This is a live. All his nightmares had come true in this one fight. But he fights on. And the one thing we have to give Joshua credit for is, even though he does take, entire rounds to recover, I mean, he's never lacked heart, Joshua, ever. And he showed it in this as well. He was still, mugging at Dubois, trying to sort of fiddle his way through the rounds, trying to hang on. Maybe if he could make it into the second half of the fight, Dubois did in the fourth round. He did look a little bit as if his work rate was petering off a little bit. I'm not saying he looked gassed, he didn't, but there was a little bit more reluctance to let the salvos go. He was still firing punches, but maybe ones, twos, possibly the odd three, rather than 4, 5, 6, 7, which he was doing at certain points in the previous rounds. In the fifth round, guess what happens? Joshua stings Dubois. He hurt him. He did hurt him. Dubois backs off, kind of like when he was hurt against Usyk, backs off, and he's thinking, okay, this is it. This might be the breakthrough. Joshua comes in, gaps in his defense. Why was he so lousy with his defense? I don't know, but he moves forward. He thinks, I've hurt him. Here we go. I'm going for the kill. Boom, 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 boom. A huge gap, and Dubois pings the right hand over. He almost placed it. It wasn't the hardest punch he'd landed on Joshua, but he placed it, and the momentum of Joshua, he moved into it. Down goes Joshua, near the ropes, almost under the ropes. Tried to get to his feet. It was never going to beat the count. Legs all over the place. Even if he had managed to get to his feet, it would have been stopped. But he was counted out. And this, I've got to be honest. Look, I mean, when you've got two bangers, anything can technically happen. If someone lands a big punch, especially if one guy doesn't have a great chin, and Joshua doesn't have a great chin, he hasn't got the worst chin I've seen, and he did take some full-blooded punches, especially in the second round against Dubois, and didn't go down. But his recuperative powers are what's lacking. They used to say Frank Bruno was chinny. He wasn't really that chinny. He just didn't know how to act when he was hurt, and he would freeze up. With Joshua, it's a case of his recuperative powers sort of, they're just not as good as they should be, or need to be. Need to be, yeah, is the phrase. And I've got to be honest, yes, anything can happen in a fight like this, but I think the way in which Dubois, he jabbed with the jabber, he put the pressure on. It was educated pressure. He wasn't sloppy. I spoke to Lee actually from inside the distance, and he was saying, he made the point which I hadn't noticed, was that Dubois was landing first and then almost allowing Joshua to ping a counter and then countering the counter. So he was doing the ones and the threes, if you know what I mean. I don't know how much of the tactics, how much of the preparation was down to Don Charles. I imagine a lot of it was. Daniel, in the post-fight interview, mentioned his father, didn't mention Don Charles at all. So, but I don't know how much of this work is being done by Don. I don't think it's a mistake. I don't think it's a coincidence that Daniel has made leaps and bounds progress since Don has been his trainer. So I think Don probably behind the scenes is doing better work than Daniel or his father would ever admit to. But whoever it was who thought out the tactics and got Daniel prepared mentally, emotionally, psychologically, physically, obviously, and tactics-wise, they deserve a huge pat on the back. A tremendous performance by Daniel Dubois. Again, only 13 months after quitting, and he did absolutely quit against Usyk. It's all a learning curve, ladies and gentlemen. It's all a learning curve. One little aside. Bear this in mind, right? Go back 10 years and look at Eddie Hearn flying high with sky. Flying in the sky, you might say. Getting all poetic here, aren't I? There was Frank Warren, Box Nation. Yesterday's news, yesterday's chip paper, finish, Now look at them. Frank wins the 5 versus 5, 5-0. His quitter of a heavyweight, in inverted commas, has just knocked really the only decent heavyweight, well, the only heavyweight. Who else has Hearn got at heavyweight? Is it only Joshua? I'm sure if it isn't just Joshua, if he's got other heavyweights, obviously Johnny Fisher, but I mean, world class heavyweights. Yeah, I mean, it just shows you how things can go. Now look at Frank compared to Eddie. I mean, Eddie must be ruining the day that Turki Al-Sheikh got them together. I think, what the fuck has this geezer done? Because Frank in his 70s, it's that type of, look, I don't want to sound like I'm creating class war here, but Eddie has done very well. He's a very good promoter, and he has turned that silver spoon into a gold one. But Frank comes from very, proper working class traditions that if you're from London, you might know a little bit about. And this guy, he's been bankrupted and everything. He will never quit. He will never quit. He will always be there, and he will always be a threat. He is Frank Warren, regardless of what you think of him, and I don't particularly have a high opinion of him. He is a fighter, all right? And Eddie Hearn now has to show as a promoter who's lost his, his main, the gravy train, the AJ gravy train. I know there's a rematch clause, and he was saying, yeah, AJ will take the rematch, but he's now got to show the same grit that Warren has shown if he wants to stay in the game. Because although Eddie's still doing very well. He's DAZN. He's with DAZN and DAZN all over the place. They've got, Eddie's putting on shows all over the world, all right? But he's lost his main calling card, which is AJ. Yeah, just food for thought, isn't it, really? But there is a rematch clause, and they're talking about the rematch happening. Could it be different? Yes, it could be different. It could turn out different, because don't forget, if AJ had not got caught early on in that first round, maybe he could have fiddled his way into the second half of the fight. Maybe he could have found his rhythm and kept Dubois contained, and then maybe he could have won. That's a lot of maybes. But don't forget, how many of you predicted Daniel Dubois to knock out AJ and floor him 3 times? And I mean, when I say knock him out, I mean knock him flat for the full 10. Not many of you, did you? Come on, I didn't. Don't get me, I'm not pointing fingers at you. I'm just saying anything can happen. Anything can happen in this game. And you know what? Thank goodness for that, because that's why we love the game. That's why we continue to watch it. Great event, terrific fight, shocking result in the manner in which it was achieved. Let me hear your opinions. Please tell me your opinions. It's pointless me doing these videos if I don't get feedback. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinions. What do you think? What do you think of the whole card, actually? Whatever you've got to say, leave it down and I'll give it a read. Much love to all of you. Thank you for watching. It's not been a bad night's boxing, has it, when all is said and done? But, yeah. Thank you very much. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button and I'll get you later. Bye for now.